When we're looking at food, which I'm very passionate about, what food is going to be nourishing us? What food should we kind of be pushing more towards? I know many of us are aware ultra processed food should be out, but again, in this kind of conflicting health space with so many voices, what are the foods that are going to nourish this good energy?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on kind of the less fun part of the conversation, which is what we have to take out, right? Everyone wants to hear like that, but that is the truth. Ultra processed food, if there's one thing we know about nutrition, it's that the ultra processed food, it's hurting our cells. And I think about ultra processed food as like, it's an experiment that has failed. And we think we take it for granted that it's normal because it's like all over our shelves, but it's actually only about a 75-year-old experiment, this ultra processed food. And it's failed. It's ruining our soil. It's ruining our planet. It's also damaging our cells. So best thing anyone can possibly do is just basically reading labels and moving away from the foods that include the ultra processed refined grains, the ultra processed refined sugars, added sugars, and the ultra processed refined industrial seed oils that are made in factories, because these things are not supporting our cellular health. So that's the stuff to take out. But I think the more importantly, like you asked, is what do we put in? And I like to think about it, from the standpoint of very first principles, like what do the cells, what molecules do they need to function properly? And then ideally we'd put that stuff in the body through our food. And some of the things that we know really help our cellular biology, I think there's 5 main ones that I think about that I actually try and include in almost every meal. And I think about omega-3 fatty acids, at least one source of omega-3 fats, a rich source of antioxidants and micronutrients, a good source of probiotics, so actually live active cultures, healthy protein, and the last one is fiber, which is basically feeds our microbiome and then lets our microbiome make a bunch of amazing byproducts that then go into our bloodstream and support our health. So the way I actually stock my kitchen and I've developed recipes and how I cook and think is taking 4 or 5 of my favorite sources of each of those things and just making sure they're always at the ready at my house. And then when I make a meal, it's basically like mixing, matching from those categories. So for probiotics, I love kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, Greek yogurt, and kvass, which is like a low sugar kombucha. For healthy protein, I love ground elk and bison and venison and pasture raised beef and eggs and lentils and beans. So I've got those in the freezer or the pantry. For micronutrients and antioxidants, it's all the colorful fruits and vegetables from the store, the farmer's market, plus spices and herbs. But basically really colorful, fresh stuff. For fiber, I fill my house with beans and legumes and nuts and seeds, basil seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, sprinkle those on everything. And omega-3s, I've always got wild caught salmon and mackerel and, sardines in my pantry. I've got omega-3 rich eggs. I've got, hemp seeds and flax seeds and chia seeds, which are good plant-based sources. So I kind of have this mental list of these different foods and then put them all together. And I know that if I can ideally get one food from each of those categories in each of my breakfast, lunch, dinner, I'm going to do a lot to meet the needs of my cells in terms of metabolic health and really give them what they need. And there's a lot of controversy, obviously, about nutrition. I mean, a carnivore would hear that and say, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? Fiber is terrible. And, someone keto might say that you actually don't need any of the fiber or something like that. But so there's a lot of controversy. But what I always say is these 5 things in so much research, we know that support the molecular, both structure and function of cellular biology. But you don't actually have to take my word for it. Like no one listening has to actually take my word for it. You can try, I would say, any whole foods, unprocessed diet that is diverse and has lots of nutrient rich food, and then track your symptoms and track your biomarkers. And I always say, if you're feeling incredible and you wake up with energy and joy and really no chronic symptoms, and your biomarkers, your key biomarkers are in the optimal range across all the metabolic biomarkers and other hormonal biomarkers, then you're probably on the right diet for you. But I can't see those things in the person listening. And so we should really get in touch with actually, we can cut through a lot of the nutrition controversy by becoming more familiar with our body awareness and our key biomarkers, tracking those regularly, and being able to be certain that the strategies we're doing are working for us. And so when someone comes at you on social media saying, oh, what are you doing? Why are you eating fiber? That's inflammatory. Beans are inflammatory. You can say, well, I've checked my inflammatory marker and it's super low and all my autoimmune markers are negative. So I actually feel and I have no symptoms and I feel amazing. So I'm actually very comfortable with my beans and my legumes and my seeds. So I think that can be quite empowering for cutting through the noise, is like focus on a whole foods, high quality strategy that fits with your belief system and your values. Ideally, I think it would be valuable for everyone to include those 5 components that I mentioned based on what I know about the research. And then track your symptoms, track your biomarkers. And if things are moving in the right direction, that's a great sign.
My number one rule is that health should be personalized and tailored to the individual. But it can be hard to do if we don't know where our current health status is. Are you someone who's been trying countless supplements and health trends but end up feeling no different? Before you even start thinking about these things, it's crucial to assess where your health status currently is. That's where Optimally Me can make a world of difference. Optimally Me is a health optimization platform that provides personalized health recommendations based on your unique biology and goals. It offers access to a variety of diagnostic blood tests, digital tools, and devices, helping you see the bigger picture of your health, whether it's metabolic, gut, hormone, mental, skin, or cardiovascular health. This is where your foundation of health should start, with the understanding of where it currently stands. What I love about Optimally Me is it allows you to analyze your health biomarkers and personalize your health journey. You can start your personalized journey with the full body MOT and DNA epigenetics blood tests. These tests assess multiple areas of your health and determine how lifestyle and environment are aging your body. Once you have your comprehensive health overview, you can start to connect your wearable devices and work with expert health coaches using the Optimally Me dashboard to support your health. And here is a little something for you. Use the code LWBW20 to get 20% off your order, because your health is personal and so should your health plan. I'm really glad that you kind of mentioned there just a generic overview, which is really helpful for people, whole foods, because I think sometimes when people hear such a different range of foods, they can feel overwhelmed or shameful that they're not kind of having that approach. And I think that, and then again, with the conflicting information online of what everyone should be doing, it can just make people feel disheartened to not even start. And something that I think a lot of people can struggle with, that I really want to approach, because you put it into your book and I loved it, was food cravings. Now, we just mentioned about what we shouldn't be eating. And I always say that because I don't kind of try to label any food as bad, but ones that we shouldn't be including as much. But then a lot of people will come back with, I'm addicted, or it makes me feel good, or I can't stop, or I don't care if I live 5 years less, I want to enjoy my life. And so there's this kind of like other nuance of a conversation happening there in a gray area, where people say, well, this makes me happy. And I thought it was really important to kind of highlight, because these are kind of real conversations that I think everyone has. And I know when I'm on my menstrual cycle, I just want to devour chocolate and pizza all day long, which my listeners might be really shocked about, but that's what I love. And so I think there's that conversation to be really mindful about. What do you say to those people that are listening and saying, oh, I can't eat like that every day, or I don't want to eat like that every day? Like, what's your kind of answer to that?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think, I kind of come back to thinking about, I think something that really motivates me is just knowing that there is a probably 10 to 20 trillion dollar global industry of ultra processed foods that desperately want us to feel that way. So for me, getting into a little bit of my resistant indignation about being controlled by industry actually really motivates me, because it's like the food is a lot of the ultra processed food that we think is bringing us happiness and we think makes us feel good. It's actually bioengineered to hijack our reward circuitry in our brain and cause us to desperately want it. And that is scary to me. And so I think just knowing that like these foods, you know, a lot of the scientists who were part of developing the addictive nature of cigarettes, once cigarettes went out of favor, they went over to the food industry to try and make food as addictive as possible. And so we're unfortunately at the mercy of these very large industries that want us to feel so gripped by our desire for these ultra processed foods. And something that also feels very empowering to me is that when we focus on trying to get as much whole nutrient rich food into our bodies, a lot of our cravings will actually effortlessly start to go away. And the reason for this is all biochemistry. A craving from the body, like a craving for something, is a sign essentially that the body's needs are not getting met, because food is our way of essentially bringing molecules into the body to meet our cells' needs. And if their core needs are not being met for micronutrients, antioxidants, proteins, whatever it is, the cells in their infinite wisdom and the microbiome in its infinite wisdom will literally change our hormonal milieu to drive us to eat more in hopes of getting us to eat what it needs. And so unfortunately, because 70% of the food is ultra processed, nutrient depleted junk, basically, we keep eating, but we're not meeting the needs of our poor body. And so a way to short circuit this is actually like, let's say you're not quite ready to give up that food you love, you know, the processed food that you love. That's fine. I get that. It's very hard. These grips are strong. But try to front load your meals with as much sort of like whole food as possible, like the pasture raised eggs or chicken or really beautiful, colorful, fresh vegetables or this, you know, the salmon or something that's really filled with a lot of nutrients, because those nutrients are going to go into the gut. They're going to bind to the molecules in those foods are going to bind to the nutrient sensing cells of the gut, which then go on to release satiety hormones that travel around your bloodstream and lift that grip of like, oh my God, I need this food. So I think about how can I, even if I do want, you know, the treats and this and that, how do I actually load the body with these, as many nutrients as possible from whole, fresh, ideally organic foods, because those are going to have even more nutrients per bite that can actually stimulate my cells to produce the hormones that make it that I don't even have to have the willpower, because my body just then doesn't have the grip. It like the satiety hormones invisibly float through our bloodstream, and all of a sudden we don't want the thing that we thought we wanted so much. So kind of putting in the good stuff to help make it easier. And then the second piece I would just say is there's been research as recently as like last year in Nature Metabolism, a premier journal, that showed that when we eat very sugar and refined carbohydrate rich foods, so basically processed foods that have added sugars and refined grains, those are going to quickly increase our blood sugar because they just are rapidly absorbed. And we get this big glucose, you know, spike. And a single glucose spike, you know, not a problem for our long-term health. But for most of us, we're having lots of glucose spikes because of the processed food. Well, what the paper showed was that when we have that big spike, it's often followed by a big crash. And that crash is called postprandial hypoglycemia. A lot of people think they deal with hypoglycemia, but in fact, what's actually happening is they're having a big spike that's then crashing. And hypoglycemia actually drives us to have cravings. The reason hypoglycemia drives us to want more food is because a blood sugar crash to the body is very scary. The body really wants to bring the blood sugar back up to normal. So the paper showed that the extent of post-meal dips in glucose, that reactive hypoglycemia, predicted how much people had cravings for high calorie, high energy foods over the next 24 hours. So the moral of the story here is that getting rid of some of our cravings might be as simple as learning to balance the blood sugar spike, which we can do through a lot of simple strategies. Jessie, Glucose Goddess, talks a lot about these, but
she's been on the show.
Even like, yeah, she's amazing. But like, actually, it's not so much about depriving yourself of the thing that you really want. It's about finding a way to inspire the body to make you not even want it altogether. And part of that can actually be balancing our blood sugar, which means maybe adding protein more to your meals, adding more fiber to your meals, more healthy fats. All of these things slow digestion, slow our absorption of sugar from our food. Eating vinegar before your meal, which improves insulin sensitivity, walking after your meals to help take away some of that glucose, but basically adjuncts that balance the blood sugar so that we don't have the crashes, which then lead to more cravings.